Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me once again is Angela Ferrell-Zabala, the executive director of Moms Demand Action. Angela, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me here today.
Before we dive into the really important conversation, can you just talk to us for a second about what exactly is Moms Demand Action?
Sure. So Moms Demand Action is the largest grassroots organization in this country fighting to end gun violence. And we are also joined by Students Demand Action. We've been around for about 13 years, and we keep doing everything we can from the local all the way up to federal level to end the scourge of gun violence in this country.
Really tragic news out of Rhode Island this weekend. A gunman entered a classroom at Brown University on Saturday where students were participating in a review session ahead of finals and opened fire. 2 students were killed, 9 other people were injured. So to start off the conversation, what is your reaction to the shooting?
Well, first and foremost, my heart goes out to the families and the community of those impacted by this horrific tragedy. Yet again, here we are. Here we are when folks are preparing, like you said, for final exams or in the holiday season, and it doesn't fall short on me that we marked a couple days ago the 13th, marked 13 years since the Sandy Hook shooting, and here we are again, having students disrupted when they should be in school learning and studying and preparing for the holidays. And this time tragedy struck yet again. And what is also difficult is to understand that so many of those students, they're second time survivors now because they've already seen this before as survivors of gun violence in school or community, and now yet again. So it's horrific. And I have to say, this is not an inevitability. And that's what frustrates me so much, is that we actually have what we need to make sure that this doesn't happen again, but we're not doing everything that we can do.
I mean, what was particularly just horrific was hearing the kids who were students at Brown, and they said, I've survived a school shooting. This is not even my first school shooting, and here I am just reliving another trauma, having to go through this again. I mean, it's a tragedy that should not be happening in America. But as you said, that this is not an inevitability. So what do you think needs to be done to prevent this type of thing from happening?
Yeah, so first of all, like you said, we have to honor the families and the victims and survivors of this shooting and many others that we don't even make the news like this with action. So I am a person of deep faith. And one of the things that really frustrates me when I hear people talk about thoughts and prayers, but there's no action, and faith without works is dead. And so we're going to continue at Moms Demand Action, Students Demand Action in every town to do everything in our power to make sure that we don't have more communities suffering like this. And some of the solutions, there's so many things that we can be doing to prevent these kinds of shootings. But we are looking at things like banning assault weapons. This is usually the gun of choice for the deadliest mass shootings in America. So we want to make sure that we're doing that. We want to make sure that we have secure storage mandates so that guns used by shooters under age 18, they usually come from the home. And we want to make sure that people that shouldn't have their hands on a gun don't have their hands on the gun. And if you are a gun owner, that it's securely stored so that you're the only one with access to that firearm. We want to make sure that we have background checks. Like, that is low-hanging fruit. So we make sure that the people that have access to guns are people that should have access to guns, and that not criminals and folks that should not have, that have prohibitions on gun ownership. We also want to make sure there are red flag laws so that if someone is in danger of hurting themselves or others, that there is some intervention that can happen. These are just little things that we can be doing that would save lives. So we're going to continue to work on those really important policies, but also we got to think about the culture around this. We got to make sure that we're having these conversations. That's one thing I would say to folks: have conversations about gun safety, have conversations with your friends and family about this, because this is something, it's a public health crisis, and it touches all of us across this country.
It impacts every community, like you said. And to your point, I think in America, a lot of the times these conversations are reactionary, right? You're only talking about it, not you particularly, in general, the nation is only talking about it after a tragedy happens in X, Y, or Z city, at X, Y, or Z school. How do you, instead of making this reactionary, how do you make this more of a proactive conversation?
Yeah, there's so many ways in which this can be a proactive conversation. Like you said, when we have tragedy that strikes like this and it makes national headlines, we seem to have everybody talking about it in some way or another. And then As the dust settles a little bit, then the conversation goes away, and those families are still trying to dig out of these horrific acts that have taken place. And so, one of the things that we are constantly doing is making sure, one, we're having these conversations by elevating the stories of survivors that have been through this, so people understand what this means, the trauma of this, how this destroys lives and families, and know that there are things that we can actually do about it. I think I said earlier about secure storage, but this means as simple as let's say there's a play date you're letting your kids go to. Talk to that family. If you have a firearm, is it locked and stored away securely? Those are basic conversations that you can be having to make sure that you are aware of where your kids are, where you are, and that you have safety plans in place. So there's lots of things that we can be doing, but I think having this conversation in a way that is not about politics or division, but more about the fact that we all have a responsibility to making sure that this country is safe and that we're keeping each other safe. And so everyone has a hand in this. And if you want to do more, you can always join Moms Demand Action or Students Demand Action. We're here, and we will accept you to come and join our fight to end the scourge of gun violence in this country.
I've had a lot of conversations with parents of kids of all ages, and there's this real fear of sending their kids to school, right? Because you see the news of these mass shootings, and sometimes it feels like to them, they really don't know if their kid is going to come home. And I'm sure as within your involvement of Moms Demand Action, you've had similar conversations. But after this shooting, Rhode Island's governor directed the state's education officials for both K through 12 as well as higher education to, quote, conduct a full review of their school safety and security plans. Specifically, as a mom and as an activist, what would you want to see in those plans?
When we're thinking about school safety plans, there's lots of data based and trauma informed ways that folks should be looking at keeping their schools safe. I think one thing that we absolutely do is we work with school districts across this country, and we make sure that there's information that goes into the backpacks of kids their first week of school that inform their parents about secure storage. I've said this several times already, but that's a huge deal. Making sure firearms are securely locked away and separate from ammunition so that kids and others that should not have access to these firearms don't get their hands on them. When we look at tragedies like school shootings, then we often see a link between someone getting access to a firearm that had no business having a firearm. So I think we can start there with those basic conversations. But I also think we need to expand it out. It's schools. We need to look at that, but around the schools and neighborhoods, communities, this isn't just a school shooting problem. We see this houses of worship. This happens. We have supermarkets. Anywhere we go in American culture right now, you can find yourself in the middle of gun violence. And that is a serious problem. And we need to do everything in our power to address that and make sure that, solutions are made clear to folks, because there's lots of things that we've done, lots of laws and things that have been passed, and there's so much more to be done. So we're going to keep working on our end to make sure, again, that communities are safe from the harm of gun violence.
And to that point, you said you can go into any community and encounter gun violence in this country. Because it can impact anyone, it shouldn't be a political issue. It is a political issue in this country, though. I want to talk about President Trump's response to this shooting in general. He did offer his condolences to the families of the 2 victims who were killed. He wished a speedy recovery to the 9 other victims who were injured. He said, Brown University, great school, really one of the greatest schools anywhere in the world. Things can happen. He also said that this was a school problem. Brown University had their own guards and their own police. What do you make of that response?
So what I would say is that, we're talking about people's lives that have been stolen. This should not be callous. This should not be something that we just kind of brush away as someone else's problem. We are all responsible for this. This is not just a Brown University thing. This is about access to firearms in this country. It's about having common sense gun laws that we know are proven to save lives. And it's about being there for the students and community and families all around Brown and beyond that are going to need to heal after this. So, I get frustrated when I hear make it so simple. Like, this isn't an inevitability. This isn't something where say, well, it happens. No, it does not have to happen. And we can't say that when people are now going to be sitting around a holiday table with a loved one that's no longer there. And it happens so much in this country. And we should be tired of it at this point. And we do have solutions for it. And we're going to, again, at Moms Demand Action, Students Demand action. We're going to keep moving and working with everyone and anyone that's willing to roll up their sleeves and get to work on this issue that is solvable.
It does happen way too much in this country. According to the Gun Violence Archive, there have been over 390 mass shootings to date this year alone. That's more than one mass shooting a day. So when you hear that number, A, what do you think? Because I know you think that this is not inevitable. We don't have to live this way where we just shrug it off and say things happen. And what do you think then also is missing from the national conversation around gun violence in America?
So I think, first of all, when we talk about mass shootings, that's more than days in a calendar year, which is terrible. We also need to think about gun violence holistically. It's the mass shootings, it's the daily gun violence, it is domestic violence, it's gun suicide, it's unintentional shootings. That's what makes up the gun violence problem in this country, and we need to look at it as a public health problem. I think there's so many things, like whether we're talking about opioids or others, when we look at it from a place of public health, then we can find solutions. We cannot politicize this any longer, because it doesn't matter your political affiliation. It doesn't matter your zip code. It doesn't matter who you are. This can find you. And so we absolutely need to do everything in our power to make sure that we're doing right by our communities. We're leading with courage, and we're doing the things that we know are proven to work. Common sense gun safety laws, and we talked about some of them: secure storage, background checks, assault weapons bans, raising the minimum age. There's so many things we can be doing to help prevent this problem in the first place.
And it's crazy because I've talked to you before, I've talked to other people at Everytown and other organizations, and all of the responses are the same, where you all say, we have these solutions ready to go. They just need to be implemented. And officials, when they came to when it comes to this Brown University shooting in particular, they talked about how the outer doors were open because it was finals time. The shooting happened on the first floor. There was hustle and bustle because it was a busy time of the year. Do you think that how much of this is gun control and gun laws, and how much is this, do you think, security measures?
Look, I think when I think about this, I think about at the same time that this was happening, we heard news over the weekend about the shooting that happened in Australia, right? The hate-based shooting. And guess what they did? Right away, they stood up and said, we're going to do something about it. So at the same time, if we're sitting and focusing on the doors as a problem, we're in trouble. That's what I would say. We have so many solutions that are beyond the doors. We're not talking about reaction. We want to do preventative measures. We want to make sure that people that are gun owners are able to be gun owners because they've gone through a background check. We want to make sure that people are securely storing their firearms. We do want to make sure that there is information shared between, whether it is the school, local officials, the state, so that there is a sharing of information and understanding, because we want to make sure that we're tracking things. We understand what we're dealing with when it comes to security of different places. But we can't start at the doors. Once we're there, we've already lost a lot. And so I want to continue to do things that are very proactive, that are making sure that we, in the first place, we don't have people that should not have firearms, having firearms, obtaining them, and then going out and wreaking havoc and harm and destruction in communities. So let's start there. Let's start the fact that this is a leading cause of death for kids in this country, and that's unacceptable. Let's start there. Let's start with the fact that we have, as you mentioned, now survivors that have survived more than one shooting or one attack of this kind. Let's start there. So there's a lot that we can work on, and I think if we come together with the focus on saving our children, making sure our communities are safe, then we can find so many solutions.
Well, Angela, I really appreciate the conversation. I appreciate your perspective and expertise. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time.
Thank you so much.